It was a late evening when the sky had turned dark and heavy with rain clouds, and the first fat drops began to fall steadily, pattering against the windshield like a soft drumbeat announcing the approaching storm. Paul gripped the steering wheel tightly as he watched the raindrops race down the glass and listened to the steady swoosh of the wipers clearing his view in a slow, comforting rhythm. The amber glow of street lamps reflected off the wet pavement, turning each roadside puddle into a shimmering mirror that flickered with every new flash of lightning. He felt a quiet calm in the sound of water hitting metal, even though a cold wind had found its way under his coat and made him long for the warmth waiting at home. A bright streak of lightning split the sky, followed by a deep rumble of thunder that rolled across the clouds and made the trees at the road's edge tremble. Paul eased his foot off the accelerator as he rounded a bend lined by dripping oaks whose leaves whispered softly in the wind, carrying the fresh smell of wet earth. Each breath he drew felt crisp and cool, and he thought about the bowl of hot soup he would enjoy once he stepped inside his house and closed the door behind him. His headlights cut through the mist like twin searchlights, guiding him past a row of empty mailboxes and a mailbox post that seemed to shiver under the rain. As he rounded another gentle curve, he noticed a lone figure standing beneath a thin tree that offered only faint shelter from the pouring rain. The woman held her arms tight around herself, her dark hair plastered to her forehead and her coat soaked through in places where the wind had whipped the rain inside. Paul's heart tightened at the sight, and without a second thought he decided to pull over and offer help to this stranger stranded in the storm. He flicked on his hazard lights and slowed the car until it came to rest on the narrow shoulder, his tires crunching on wet gravel as he braked. The engine idled quietly while water poured off the hood, and Paul stepped out into the rain, feeling cold droplets seep through his jacket within seconds. He held up his umbrella and walked over to her, the rain dripping from the metal ribs in quick, bright lines as he approached. She looked up at him with wide, grateful eyes that shone with relief when she saw he had stopped for her. "Are you all right?" Paul called softly over the sound of the falling rain, keeping his voice calm so she would not worry. She nodded but said nothing at first, staring at the umbrella above her head like it was a lifeline in that downpour. "I'm stranded," she whispered, her words trembling like the raindrops at her feet. "My car broke down a few miles back, and I can't get it started." Paul offered her his hand and said, "Come with me," gesturing toward the open passenger door of his car that backed away from the muddy shoulder. She hesitated for a moment, then slipped one hand into his before letting him guide her across the slick ground. Water dripped from his umbrella onto the ground in a tiny splash pattern, and he closed the car door behind her with a gentle click. As soon as he slid back behind the wheel, he turned up the heater, and warm air flooded the cabin, wrapping them both in a sudden, comforting warmth. She let out a small sigh of relief and pressed her wet coat closer around her as she settled into the seat. Paul glanced over and offered her a soft smile. "Are you cold?" he asked, pulling a folded blanket from the back seat. "I'm fine," she said, "but thank you," and she watched the blanket drift toward her in his outstretched hand. "My name is Paul," he said, "and I'm happy to give you a ride anywhere you need." She opened her mouth to speak but hesitated, then whispered, "I'm Maria," brushing a wet strand of hair from her forehead. "I was on my way home after visiting a friend, but my gas light came on, and my car stopped without warning." Paul nodded and said, "Don't worry. I know a gas station a few miles up the road. We'll get you help in no time." Outside, the rain tapped a steady beat on the roof, but inside the car there was calm as they shared a quiet moment. Maria peered out at the dark, blurred world beyond the window, where trees and street signs passed in dull shapes through the wet glass. She turned back to Paul and said softly, "Thank you for stopping. I thought I might be out here all night." He smiled and said, "It was no trouble. I drive this way every day. It's easy for me to help a neighbor." She drifted back in her seat, watching the road ahead, and he guided the car onto the main street. The wipers swished steadily, and the white lines of the center road markers slid under their headlights one by one. Maria reached for the blanket and pulled it up to her shoulders, closing her eyes as warmth spread through her. Paul checked the rearview mirror and saw her relax, her shoulders dropping as she took a deeper breath. He told her a little about the town where he lived, how everyone knew each other, and how people looked out for one another, even in a storm. She nodded and said, "I think I might move here someday," her voice soft but certain. As the car rolled on toward the glowing station sign in the distance, the rain's rhythm and the hum of the engine created a gentle lullaby that wrapped them both in quiet trust. The gas station lights shone like stars in the rainy night sky. Their glow created warm patches on the slick ground, cutting through the wet darkness and guiding every cautious driver to safety beneath the dripping canopy. Paul pulled the car up next to a pump under a wide canopy. Paul felt that the bright lights offered a small promise of hope in the heavy storm as he parked his car and prepared to help the stranded woman. He handed Maria his umbrella as he walked around to the rear. Moisture dripped from the umbrella's edges and splashed on the concrete, reminding him how essential simple tools could be in a downpour. The rain fell in steady streams, turning the ground into a slick mirror of light. Each drop that bounced from the pavement shimmered in the light, turning ordinary concrete into a glossy sea of moving reflections under the night sky. Maria watched from inside as Paul filled her gas tank with careful, measured strokes. Through the rain-streaked window, she watched the pump nozzle sway gently in his hand, and she felt a wave of relief as fuel poured into her tank. He checked her car's engine once the pump clicked off to make sure nothing else was wrong. As the meter ticked upward, Paul thought about how small acts of kindness could help someone feel safe again when they were lost in trouble. The smell of gasoline mixed with the fresh scent of rain in the cold night air. The scent mixed with the earth around the station, bringing back memories for Paul of long drives with his family on vacation roads lined with tall trees. Maria thanked him softly again, her voice warm against the cool backdrop of the storm. She shivered slightly as she exhaled, her breath forming tiny clouds in the warm air of the engine, and she felt grateful for Paul's thoughtfulness. She took a small paper towel from the pump and wiped a bit of water off her dash. Draping a paper towel over her hands, Maria tried to dry the small puddles of water on her lap before they could soak her jeans any further. Paul returned the hose to its slot and reattached the gas cap firmly. He squeezed the cloth gently to remove water, careful not to let any drop hide under the seams or leave a cold spot that might chill her further. He handed her back the umbrella before sliding into the passenger seat. Before returning the nozzle, he gave it one final wipe to keep the station tidy, showing care for the place that offered help in her moment of need. Maria rolled down her window slightly and said she would pay him back one day. He handed the umbrella back to her with a smiling nod, happy to return the small item that had kept both of them dry during the worst of the storm. Paul smiled and shook his head, saying she did not owe him anything. Maria pressed her fingertips to the handle, her hands still damp, and she smiled wide enough to warm the cold car interior around them. He simply wanted to help after remembering how lonely that road could feel. Paul waved aloud as he climbed in, feeling content that he had helped someone in trouble without asking for anything in return. With a wave, he guided his car back onto the glistening road, rain pattering overhead. The sound of sliding into the seat and clicking the seatbelt felt reassuring, and he heard the engine purr as he started the car once more. Maria watched his taillights until they disappeared around the bend. Lights from the station blurred past in streaks as he drove away, and he thought about how good it felt to lend a helping hand. Paul drove back home, heart lightened by the good deed he had done. His mind replayed Maria's relieved expression, and he realized that even small gestures could create lasting memories for both the giver and the receiver. The rain had lessened to a gentle drizzle by the time he neared his street. The rain slowed to tiny droplets that tapped gently on the roof, as though nature itself paused to show gratitude for a kind act. He turned onto his quiet block, where trees lined each front yard like silent sentinels. He followed the familiar route back toward his neighborhood, where large trees arched over the road, their wet leaves whispering in the breeze. His house came into view with its warm light spilling from the windows. Ahead, the houses stood dark behind front yards glistening under street lamps like quiet giants watching over the sleeping town. Paul parked in his driveway and killed the engine with a tired sigh. Pulling into his driveway felt comforting, and he killed the engine, listening to the soft click that signaled his day was finally done. Before he reached for his keys, he thought of Maria safe and warm inside her car. Paul paused before stepping out, thinking of Maria driving safely away, and he smiled at the thought that he had made her night less frightening. He stepped out into the damp air and shut his door behind him. He grabbed his wet coat from the back seat and shook off droplets that danced in the light before draping it over his arm. Raindrops slipped from his coat sleeves onto the ground below. Each step toward the front steps left a shallow imprint in the puddle that formed at the base of the path, tracing his journey back home. He locked his car and started walking up the short path to his front porch. The porch light glowed warmly, creating a halo around the doorway and welcoming him back from the chilly storm he had just faced. The wooden boards creaked softly under his feet with each step. Raindrops slid off the roof in a soft patter behind him as he reached for the key, their sound blending with the quiet breathing of his house. Paul paused at the door, taking a moment to enjoy the warmth inside. With a twist and a click, The door unlocked, and he pushed it open to step into the dry, fragrant air of his cozy home. He turned the key, and the door swung open with a soft click. A wave of warmth and cinnamon coffee scent wrapped around him instantly, carrying memories of mornings spent reading by the kitchen window. A wave of warmth and dry air welcomed him back after his wet drive. He set his umbrella in the stand by the door and patted it to remove extra water, careful not to drip on the polished wood floor. He closed the door and wiped his shoes on the mat before stepping further in. His coat drooped from the hook by the entryway, and he glanced at it before turning to head for the living room with lighter steps. Inside, his home smelled of cinnamon coffee and fresh-baked bread from that morning. The soft glow of lamps and the gentle hum of the heater filled the living room, and he sank into his favorite armchair with a happy sigh. Paul laid his umbrella and coat on a rack by the entryway. On the side table, a half-finished cup of coffee sent up small curls of steam, reminding him he had forgotten to finish his morning routine. He walked toward the living room, noting how the lamps cast a cozy glow. He reached for the mug, lifting it carefully to avoid spilling any warming liquid onto the soft rug beneath his feet. The soft rug felt warm under his wet shoes as he made his way deeper inside. Each sip felt like a reward after his rainy drive, the rich flavor filling him with warmth from his head to his toes. He sat down on his favorite armchair and let out a satisfied sigh. He closed his eyes and thought of Maria's grateful words, letting the memory wrap him in a quiet joy like a soft blanket. His mind replayed Maria's thankful smile and relieved eyes. Outside, the rain finally ended, leaving tiny shimmering beads on window panes that caught the light from inside and sparkled gently. The next morning, Paul woke up to a strange thumping noise that made his heart pound before he even opened his eyes. He sat upright in bed and listened as the sound grew louder, like the beating wings of a huge metal bird hovering nearby. The bright morning light glinted off the spinning blades and cast moving shadows on his lawn. Golden sunlight peeked through his curtains, but the noise was so loud it drowned out the quiet of dawn. He felt a mix of surprise and worry as the powerful machine hovered so close to his home. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and noticed the floor was cold against his feet. The wind from the rotors rattled the leaves on the trees and whipped his hair around his face. He stood up and walked slowly toward the window to find out where the sound was coming from. He wondered why the helicopter had come back and what was looking for above his house. The wooden floorboards creaked softly under his weight as he reached the window frame. It made him remember the kind act he had done for Maria just the night before. Pulling back the curtain with both hands, he stared outside at a strange sight in his front yard. A huge helicopter hovered low above his house, its long blades slicing through the air with a powerful rhythm. The bright morning light glinted off the spinning blades and cast moving shadows on his lawn. Paul's eyes widened as he saw the helicopter's dark body and bright searchlights aimed at his front door. He felt a mix of surprise and worry as the powerful machine hovered so close to his home. He rubbed his forehead and blinked several times to make sure he was not still dreaming. The wind from the rotors rattled the leaves on the trees and whipped his hair around his face. The roar of the engine rattled the glass panes and shook the walls of his small home. He pressed his face close to the cool window and watched the spinning blades stir the morning mist. He wondered why the helicopter had come back and what was looking for above his house. The wind from the rotors whipped raindrops from the shingles and sent them flying in thin sheets. He could see a uniformed pilot looking down through the open door of the helicopter. Paul felt a lump form in his throat as he wondered what could be so urgent to bring this machine here. He thought back to the woman he had helped last night and tried to see a connection. The blades kicked up dust and fluttered the edges of his welcome mat on the porch. He glanced at his phone on the bed and saw messages from neighbors asking if he was all right. His heart raced as he tore off the blankets and rushed to his front door. He grabbed a thick sweater and slipped both arms into it before stepping outside. The cool morning air bit at his skin as he opened the door onto the wet porch. He took a few careful steps down onto the grass, which felt stiff under his socks. The rotor wash lifted leaves off the ground and sent them swirling like frightened birds. Paul shielded his eyes from the glare of the searchlight as he stepped fully into the yard. He raised a hand to wave at the pilot but hesitated, unsure if it was the right thing to do. The helicopter dipped lower and a loudspeaker crackled to life with a muffled voice. It made him remember the kind act he had done for Maria just the night before. He could make out the words Paul Henderson in emergency situation over the roar. He fumbled for his glasses and put them on to see the soldier in the open door more clearly. The pilot pointed down at him and then at the roof of his house, giving a quick gesture. Paul looked up at the roof and saw small solar panels that shone under the scattered rain. He felt a mix of surprise and worry as the powerful machine hovered so close to his home. He felt the helicopter's shadow pass over him and a cold breeze swirl at his back. He wondered if this had something to do with the storm from last night or Maria's broken car. The loudspeaker voice called out for him to approach carefully with his hands visible. His mind spun with questions as he took another step toward the churning blades. He could hear his own breathing in his ears above the sound of the helicopter's engine. He forced himself to stay calm and move slowly, just as the voice had instructed. Paul reached the edge of the porch and looked directly up at the open door of the helicopter. The pilot shouted something about a security alert and pointed him to stand under the searchlight. He squared his shoulders and stood still, hoping his calm face would not alarm the others. He watched as a rope ladder dropped smoothly to the porch roof from the helicopter. It felt oddly exciting. The ladder rung swung freely as Paul reached up with careful steps toward the open hatch. The drop of rain on each rung made it slick and cold, challenging him to move slowly and with care. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. He felt the ladder sway and made sure to hold on tight with both hands. He could feel the wind buffet him with every whir of the rotors, making the ladder shake gently beneath his feet. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. The cold metal rung cut into his damp gloves as he climbed higher. His damp gloves pressed against the metal rung, reminding him how real and dangerous this moment was. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. Rain dripped from the edge of the helicopter's doorway onto the ladder. Rainwater dripped off the edge of the roof and onto his head as he climbed. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. He could see the wet grass in his house getting smaller as he ascended one rung at a time. He looked down at the grass where his house stood and felt a thrill of adventure. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. Each pull of his arms brought him closer to the bright cabin interior. Each rung he climbed echoed in his mind as a small victory against fear. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. Paul's boots thumped on the ladder's lower rungs as he braced against the wind. The sound of the engine's beat matched his pulse as he gained height. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. He reached the top rung and stepped onto the roof of the helicopter. He steadied himself by pressing his forehead against the low doorway lintel. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. He pressed his foot down and felt the platform tilt slightly under his weight. The pilot spoke again, the voice clear but urgent against the storm's remains. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. He turned toward the open hatch and crouched to enter safely. Soldiers moved quickly past, carrying gear and checking instruments on the wall. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. The pilot's voice crackled through a small speaker nearby. He noticed small boxes with switches and blinking lights along the cabin frame. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. He heard quiet instructions telling him to move forward carefully. The smell of hydraulic fluid and rubber filled his nose as he stood inside. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. He crawled through the opening and placed his hands on the metal floor inside. His jacket brushed against cold metal seats as he moved into the cabin. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. The cabin was narrow and lined with seats bolted to the walls. A flicker of light above cast shadows that danced across the damp floor. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. He stood up slowly, steadying himself against the rattling floor. The helicopter's vibration tickled his bones and made it hard to stand still. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. Seats ran down both sides of the cabin, with straps hanging from the ceiling. He leaned on a seat back to steady himself against a sudden lurch. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. He heard soldiers speaking softly and tapping controls on the wall. The pilot spoke again, the voice clear but urgent against the storm's remains. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. The smell of oil and fuel was strong and mixed with the scent of wet rubber boots. Soldiers moved quickly past, carrying gear and checking instruments on the wall. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. Paul felt the helicopter's vibration under his feet as it idled. He noticed small boxes with switches and blinking lights along the cabin frame. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. A soldier pointed to a seat by the window and motioned for him to sit. The smell of hydraulic fluid and rubber filled his nose as he stood inside. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. He walked carefully and turned to face the row of seats. His jacket brushed against cold metal seats as he moved into the cabin. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. He sat down and pulled a thick strap across his lap. A flicker of light above cast shadows that danced across the damp floor. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. The shoulder belt clicked into place with a firm click. The helicopter's vibration tickled his bones and made it hard to stand still. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. He tested the strap, making sure it was tight and secure. He leaned on a seat back to steady himself against a sudden lurch. He felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. Outside the window, the wind roared and mist slapped against the glass. The strap felt heavy and firm as he tightened it across his chest. He pressed his forehead to the cool surface to see better. Outside, the mist turned the world into a blur of gray and green. The ground below was a patchwork of green fields and winding roads. He heard the pilot announce preparations for takeoff in a calm voice. He noticed the station where he had helped Maria just hours ago. He pressed his toes against the floor to brace for the lift. His heart beat faster when he recognized the glowing pump lights from his memory. His name echoed softly over the speaker as part of the safety check. A soldier handed him a folded sheet of paper with a map and instructions. He peered at the paper map, tracing the route to the storm site. He unfolded the paper and saw notes about a storm-damaged area nearby. Warmth from the cabin lights contrasted with the cold glass window. The map showed power lines down and the road blocked by fallen branches. He realized how much he liked the sense of discovery in this strange flight. He read a message that said Maria was safe at the station with extra fuel. The blade spun faster, cutting through the air with sharp precision. Paul felt relief at hearing that she was okay after all the worry. He felt his stomach lift as the helicopter rose into the sky. He looked around for the pilot to thank him for the rescue flight. Raindamp hair lifted from his forehead as wind rushed past the window. He saw the pilot in the front who gave him a thumbs up. The ground fell away quickly, and Paul saw a field stretch to the horizon. He folded the map and tucked it into his jacket pocket. He saw the glowing station lights shrink until they were tiny dots below. The rotor blades began to spin faster, and the cabin hummed loudly. The roar of the engine turned into a steady sound that filled his ears. He felt the seats press against his back as the helicopter lifted off. He gripped the armrest to keep from floating in the sudden lift. He gripped the edge of his seat and braced for the rise into the sky. The pilot's silhouette appeared in the front as they headed toward the storm site. As the helicopter cut through the morning sky, Paul watched from his window as green fields and winding roads spread out like a patchwork quilt below, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. He smelled the faint scent of fuel mixed with cool, damp air that drifted in through a small vent above his head, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. He heard the pilot's calm voice give directions to the crew over a radio headset as they flew toward the damaged area, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. Outside, clouds drifted low in ragged strips, and bits of sunlight shone through breaks in the gray ceiling above them, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. Paul felt the rotor wash shake the cabin floor, and each pulse of vibration echoed his racing heart as he prepared for what lay ahead, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. He held the edge of his seat tightly as the helicopter banked slightly, tilting him toward the open side where crew members pointed to landmarks below, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. He saw broken power lines hanging like silent wires across a twisted stretch of road that had been battered by last night's storm, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. Rubble and fallen branches littered fields near a flood-swollen creek that had spilled its banks and swollen currents, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. The pilot nodded to a soldier seated beside him, and that soldier handed Paul a thick pair of gloves attached to a safety harness, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. Paul pulled on the gloves and buckled the harness over his jacket, feeling the leather warm against his skin, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. The crew prepared a winch and anchored it to the floor, checking bolts and cables with precise, practiced movements, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. Below, a section of the highway lay flooded, its surface glistening under shallow water that covered miles of blacktop, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. Paul heard the clear click of the harness lock and felt a steady pressure against his chest when the soldier tested its strength, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. He looked back to the cabin door and saw a gentle slope of muddy earth leading to a small station building at the creek's edge, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. The station's bright lights blinked like distant beacons, and Paul felt a wave of relief knowing Maria was safe there, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. The pilot's voice came through again, giving Paul a final safety check before the helicopter hovered over the site, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. Paul gripped his gloves and stood up, steadying himself against the bump and jolt of the idling machine, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. He stepped close to the open door on a narrow metal platform as two crew members held him steady, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. The wind rushed past, whipping his hair back and sending rain droplets flying in thin sheets across his face, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. He looked down and saw the station platform rise and fall, its yellow safety stripes clear against the wet concrete, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. The winch cable whirred softly as it lowered a small cargo basket toward the ground, carrying supplies and emergency tools, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. Paul watched the basket lock onto a hook at the station before the cable retracted to bring the gear back up, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. He felt a firm hand on his shoulder, guiding him to lean forward when the moment came to descend, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. Paul nodded and hooked his safety line to a secure ring, his boots planted firmly on the narrow ledge, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. He tested the grip on the railing before pressing a control that lowered a short ladder to meet waiting arms on the ground, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. Below, soldiers and station staff reached up to hold the ladder steady, their faces full of urgency and hope, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. Paul found his footing on the first rung, each metal step cold and slick beneath his boots, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. He looked over his shoulder and saw the helicopter hovering steadily, bright searchlights scanning for any risk, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. Each step down brought him closer to the ground, and Paul felt the gravity of his mission pressing on him, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. He heard shouts of encouragement from the station workers below as he reached the last rung, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. His boots touched the wet pavement, and Paul let out a small breath of triumph and gratitude, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. A soldier untied his line and helped him step fully onto the ground, where he felt safe and solid, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. He removed his gloves and handed them to a crew member, his fingers stiff but sure, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. Maria stepped forward through a small group of helpers, her face lighting up when she saw him, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. She held up the fleece blanket and gasket she had received, her eyes shining with gratitude and relief, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. Paul hugged her carefully to keep her from slipping on the wet ground, feeling the warmth of the blanket between them, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. She whispered, "Thank you again," and he nodded, his voice lost in the bustle around them, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. The helicopter's blade slowed, and the machine drifted away to help others in need, leaving a soft hum in the air, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. Paul and Maria walked together under a canopy held by station staff, the floodlights casting long shadows behind them, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. Muffled thunder rolled in the distance, a reminder that the storm's power was not yet fully spent, and he felt honored to help in this rescue under the gray storm clouds. Inside the station hall, volunteers bustled around warm heaters, offering blankets, hot drinks, and dry clothing to those soaked by the storm, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Paul and Maria walked past tables filled with steaming cups of tea and coffee that created little clouds of warmth in the cool, damp air, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Maria smiled as she wrapped a thick wool blanket around her shoulders, feeling its soft fibers chase away the chill from her wet clothes, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Paul nodded to a station worker who handed him a towel to dry off his hair and coat before they moved deeper into the shelter, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. The walls were lined with shelves holding extra coats, boots, and emergency supplies neatly organized under bright overhead lights, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. A volunteer pointed Paul toward a seating area where people were asked to register their names and needs on a simple paper form, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Maria sat down at a small folding table and wrote her name and situation with a pencil, pausing to catch her breath between lines, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Paul stood behind her, offering his arm for support while glancing around at families huddled together in damp clothing, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Another volunteer approached with a hot snack and biscuits on a tray, encouraging them to eat before returning to the wet roads, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. They accepted the food gratefully, the crunch of the biscuit and warmth of the drink soothing their nerves after the helicopter ride, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. The room hummed with soft conversations, punctuated by the distant drip of water and the occasional roll of thunder outside, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Volunteers coordinated with radio operators who relayed messages about road openings in areas still in need of assistance, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Paul asked one worker where the power lines had come down and was told a nearby grove of trees had fallen across the road, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Maria listened intently as another volunteer explained where emergency crews would clear debris and restore electricity, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. A child ran past carrying a bright yellow raincoat, making Paul smile at the simple resilience of people in tough storms, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. The station manager offered them both a dry pack of sandwiches and told them to rest as long as needed, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Maria thanked the manager and said she felt safe for the first time since her car broke down, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Paul looked around at the volunteers busily organizing more blankets and food, humbled by their dedication, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. He asked if he could help in any small way and was given a stack of blankets to fold neatly on a nearby table, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. As he folded each blanket, he noticed how many pairs of hands worked together to prepare for new arrivals, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Maria sat with a group of residents sharing quiet stories of resilience and kindness from the community, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. She learned about neighbors helping neighbors, bringing generators and flashlights when power failed, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Paul finished folding the blankets and carried them to a metal rack, feeling useful and connected to the effort, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. A volunteer thanked him and offered to send him back home when the roads cleared later that day, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Paul shook his head and said he wanted to stay until Maria felt ready to travel on roads that might still be slick, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Maria squeezed his hand in gratitude and said his kindness had helped her feel safe again, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. They watched as a team of workers loaded relief bags onto trucks bound for other storm-hit areas, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. The engines of the trucks rumbled as they departed, leaving trails of exhaust that mingled with humid air, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Paul and Maria stepped outside briefly under the station canopy to watch the convoy move away, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. They felt raindrops on their faces but were sheltered by a large tarpaulin overhead, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Maria turned to Paul and said she could never thank him enough for giving her hope during a frightening night, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Paul smiled softly and said their small act of kindness had grown into a larger wave of help for many, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. They walked back inside where the station lights glowed and the warmth felt even more comforting, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. A volunteer offered them a ride in a flatbed truck to the cleared main road leading toward home, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Maria accepted and ushered Paul onto the back of the truck where seats had been set up for passengers, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. As the truck moved away, they saw rows of fallen branches and twisted signs along their route, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. They held hands and watched the station disappear behind them in the misty morning light, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Paul felt grateful for the chain of kindness that had started with offering a lift in the rain, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Maria rested her head on his shoulder and said she would never forget his gentle generosity, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. Together, they traveled toward a brighter day, believing that each small act of help could heal a storm-tossed world, and he felt proud of the kindness that connected them all. The flatbed truck rolled steadily down the main road, its engine's low rumble blending with the soft drip of leftover rain from the canopy above them. Maria leaned forward, watching shattered branches and bent road signs slip past in a blur of green and gray, and she pressed her fingers to the cool metal rail for balance. Paul sat beside her, wrapped in the fleece blanket he had given her, and he felt a warm satisfaction at knowing she was safe after such a frightening night. The truck's headlights cut through the misty morning air, illuminating stretches of asphalt slick with puddles and scattered leaves. They passed the station where they had taken shelter, its lights now dimming as volunteers moved on to the next call for help. Maria whispered a soft, "Thank you again," her voice barely louder than the truck's engine, and Paul nodded with a gentle smile. A bird lifted from a dripping branch overhead and burst into flight against the pale sky, its wings flashing in the dawnlight. Paul watched the bird disappear into the retreating storm clouds and thought about how each small act of kindness could lift someone's spirits. They came to a stretch of road where power lines still lay, tangled across the shoulder, reminders of last night's fierce winds. The driver slowed slightly, steering carefully around the fallen wires before resuming a steady pace toward their town. Maria pointed out the window at a flooded ditch where water still pooled in deep, muddy swaths beneath a broken guardrail. Paul offered her a sip of warm tea from a travel mug, and she accepted gratefully, letting the steam lift away her last shiver. They passed a row of dark houses with lights just flickering on as residents emerged to survey the storm's damage. Paul thought about his own street, wondering if his neighbors had fared as well as he and Maria had. He reached into his pocket for his phone and saw messages of thanks from friends who had heard about his late-night ride. Maria rested her head on his shoulder for a moment, closing her eyes as the truck's motion and gentle hum lulled her. Paul squeezed her hand and said he was glad she could finally relax after such a rough evening. The road curved past a small park where broken tree limbs lay, scattered across the walking path like driftwood. A stray cat darted from under a bench and disappeared into a bush, seeking shelter from the lingering drizzle. Paul smiled at the cat's quick retreat, thinking how nature itself was finding ways to recover after the storm. The truck turned onto the street near Paul's house, and he felt a twinge of pride in the calm, orderly world they were returning to. Maria opened her eyes and looked at the neat rows of homes, each with its own story of safety or struggle from the night before. Paul asked the driver to stop near Maria's home first, and the truck eased to a halt under a streetlight still flickering from the outage. Maria gathered her blanket and gloves, then stepped down onto the wet pavement, her boots sinking slightly into soft mud. She stood for a moment, deep in thought, before turning back to Paul with tears in her eyes and hands outstretched. Paul knelt and hugged her gently, careful not to let her slip on the rain-slicked concrete. "I'll never forget this," she whispered, her voice thick with gratitude. Paul brushed a wet strand of hair from her forehead and smiled, saying he was just glad she was safe. Maria stepped away, waved, and then walked up her front path toward the warm light spilling from her doorway. Paul watched her go, feeling a gentle sadness at the goodbye, but comforted by the bond they had formed. He climbed back onto the truck's flatbed and settled into his seat, the driver nodding before pulling away. The truck carried him a short distance to his own street, where he climbed down onto his porch steps. Paul paused under the porch light, letting the warmth from inside beckon him after his long night. He looked up at the window where his own living room glowed and felt a deep sense of homecoming. Inside, he knew the empty armchair and half-finished coffee cup were waiting to welcome him back. Paul unlocked his door and stepped into the dry, fragrant air of his house, the crunch of his wet shoes muffled by the rug. He shrugged off his coat and blanket, letting them drop into a damp heap by the entryway. Paul walked to the kitchen to pour himself a fresh cup of coffee, the aroma stirring his tired but happy heart. He carried the mug into his living room, sank into his armchair, and let out a contented sigh as the chair hugged him warmly. As the morning light grew stronger through his curtains, Paul closed his eyes and promised himself he would always remember how one simple offering of help could create a bond that outlasted any storm. After the storm, life in town slowly returned to its usual pace under bright new skies that filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness sparked change in people's lives. Paul spent the rest of the day helping neighbors clear debris from driveways and roads. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness sparked change in people's lives. Word of his late-night good deeds spread through the neighborhood like warm sunlight. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness sparked change in people's lives. Neighbors stopped their work to thank him and offered him cold drinks and snacks. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness sparked change in people's lives. Paul smiled and accepted their gratitude with a humble nod and gentle wave. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness sparked change in people's lives. That evening, he received a knock at his door from a local reporter, carrying a microphone. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness sparked change in people's lives. The reporter introduced herself as Nina and said she wanted to share his story in the morning news. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness sparked change in people's lives. Paul hesitated, Feeling shy but agreed because he hoped more people would help each other, it filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. Nina filmed a short clip of him standing in his front yard. Still damp from the day's work, it filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. She asked Paul why he had decided to help a stranger in the rain, and he said it felt like the right thing to do. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. Kindness, he said softly, can travel far beyond a single act or a single night. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. The camera light blinked, and Paul realized his simple choice was touching many hearts. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. The next morning, the local news broadcast showed his face and the story of the rain rescue. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. Maria appeared in the clip too, smiling and holding her warm blanket beside him. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. Viewers saw them standing under a rainbow that stretched across the clear blue sky. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. The station host praised Paul's generosity and explained how it inspired the community. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. After the segment, Paul's phone rang constantly with messages of thanks and encouragement. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. He felt overwhelmed by the kindness returned to him in messages from friends and strangers. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. Maria called to tell him she was settling into her new job and that she had posted their story online. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. Her words warmed Paul's heart as he sat on his porch swing in the afternoon sun. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. Later, a small group of neighbors hosted an impromptu block party to celebrate everyone's safety. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. They set up tables on the street with homemade food, lemonade, and cheerful decorations. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. Paul watched from beside the grill as children ran around with colorful balloons and smiles. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. His action had sparked a wave of community spirit that not even the storm could wash away. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. As night fell, the block party lights glowed softly under a sky full of stars. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. Music played from a neighbor's speaker, and laughter mingled with the gentle evening breeze. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. Paul sat in a lawn chair with Maria by his side, both wrapped in warm blankets. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. They shared stories of the day, from the crash of thunder the night before to today's warm sunshine. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. Maria squeezed Paul's hand and thanked him again for changing her life forever. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. He replied that meeting her had been a gift he would always treasure in his heart. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. Stars reflected in their eyes as they looked upward and felt connected to something larger. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. The storm had brought chaos, but it also brought new friendships and hope. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives. Under that starry sky, they promised to keep helping others whenever they could. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness sparked change in people's lives. Word spread beyond the town, and soon a relief fund was set up to help more travelers in need. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness sparked change in people's lives. Paul donated a small amount himself and encouraged others to give what they could. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness sparked change in people's lives. Knowing his story had grown into a movement made Paul feel proud and humbled at once. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness sparked change in people's lives. He realized that one act of kindness had started a ripple of good that would not stop. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness sparked change in people's lives. In the days that followed, people carried umbrellas for strangers and checked on neighbors. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness sparked change in people's lives. The town became kinder, friendlier, and more connected because one man stopped in the rain. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness sparked change in people's lives. And Paul went to bed each night with a quiet smile, grateful that a simple choice had made a big difference. It filled him with hope and showed that simple acts of kindness spark change in people's lives.